Microtransactions are purchases you can make in video games to get virtual goods. They're a pretty good way to monetize video games when done right, but oh boy are they controversial. They're commonplace nowadays, but they weren't always, and as microtransactions were slowly becoming the norm for video games, so as the discussion around it turned into a heated topic for a vast number of video game players. There's a lot to say when it comes to microtransactions, what all different kinds are, how they affect games, how bad are they, and what should we even do about them. It's honestly a lot to wrap your head around, and while it's easy to just bash the worst kinds of microtransactions, I want this video to be much more than just a rant about how microtransactions killed gaming, and I seek to give out my opinion in a nuanced manner to hopefully provide some much needed insight on this complicated topic. So, let's have a talk about microtransactions, shall we? For years now, microtransactions have been something that's been actively weighing on my mind. Being an avid video game player, I often encounter microtransactions, and so it's inevitable that I have to cast my judgment on them at some point. However, doing so proved to be considerably more difficult than I thought. I thought a lot about the microtransactions in the game that I play, going as far to even write an essay for school about microtransactions, of which I was somehow subsequently falsely accused of plagiarizing by my incredibly terrible grade 10 English teacher. I hate you, Miss. My point is that despite putting this much time and effort into expressing my thoughts about microtransactions, I still continue to dedicate time to thinking about them, which has all culminated into me making this video. The central issues that I'd like to tackle about microtransactions boil down to how acceptable are they, as in how bad do the majority of people view them as, and what are the effects of microtransactions as a whole, ranging from how it changes games themselves, the quality, the balance and more, to effects on the overall industry and the players. It's a lot to discuss, so to hopefully make things easier, I'd like to start off by introducing you to a game I made about a year ago. To subscribers of this channel, you'll probably recognize it as the game I made in this video with my friend Kevin, Tax Fraud Simulator 2. It's a free-to-play game and also has no microtransactions, but if me and Kevin were to monetize it, how'd that go about happening? Hey Kevin, this YouTube thing isn't really working out. I thought I'd be rich by now, but my analytics are terrible.
Have you considered not taking 3 months to upload a video?
I've got the perfect plan though. We should add microtransactions to Tax Fraud Simulator 2.
That's a great idea. I'll come to your house to talk about this more.
I want to use Tax Fraud Simulator 2 as a sort of guinea pig by hypothetically monetizing it in different ways to help further the discussion and demonstrate some points. But what even are all the ways to monetize a game? Hey, tier lists are the hip and cool thing nowadays, right? We can make one. Alright, well that's the video. Thanks for watching. Kevin, now that I've been fooled with fake tier lists of thinking that pay-to-win microtransactions and loot boxes are good, then we can finally enact our evil plan of becoming filthy rich!
Yes, I love money. Now I just want to make sure no one from the outside finds out. Hey! I think there's someone down there.
Hey, what are you doing there? The video already ended. Kevin, take that guy to the dungeon.
Come here, boy! Sorry, viewer, but this is the end of the road for you.
However, we're short on a villain tropes quota, so we're gonna have to explain to you our evil plans before we kill you, which inevitably gives someone enough time to save you moments before your death, leading to our evil plans being thwarted because we blab to you about all of it.
Our first course of action? Pay-to-win microtransactions galore.
When it comes to how people categorize microtransactions in video games, no more prevalent is the usage of the term pay to win. For many, it's used to signal to themselves that a game has crossed a line in their minds as being monetized in a predatory fashion, as it changes the design and balance of a game, and usually for the worse. So, because of this, it will be useful for us to fully unpack this term. Colloquially, the term of pay to win generally means that there are microtransactions that provide a significant advantage that otherwise would be unobtainable without spending money. An issue arises with this definition because not only is it vague enough so it can be liberally applied to a wide variety of different kinds of microtransactions, but also from person to person, what counts as a significant advantage, and what unobtainable without spending money means is not the same, leading to debates where avid fans passionately defend their beloved game in response to accusations of it being pay to win. Want to see it in action? Well, remember that PvP shooter game called D-Day that I talked about in a past video? Let's take a trip back to it. But oh boy, where do I even start? My perspective of the game is, well, not great. I originally was a pretty active player, became frustrated with the pay-to-win microtransactions in the game, joined the game's Discord server to talk to other players about said pay-to-win microtransactions, then discovered that some don't take too fondly to people who complain about it, got insulted and yelled senselessly for quite a bit, then finally made a video about the game to vent my frustrations about this whole situation, where I just explained how D-Day is pretty obviously pay-to-win, with the hardcore fans vehemently trying to deny this. I don't think that video is particularly amazing, despite how many views it managed to get. Back when I made it, I wasn't that interested in making some meticulously crafted video where I carefully examined arguments on both sides because of, well, people like this. Like literally, what is the point of trying to engage in a meaningful discussion if all I'm gonna get back is insults, non sequiturs, and straw man arguments? As such, it's missing a nuanced discussion on why the microtransactions like the one seen in D-Day are bad and why I believe them to be unjustified in the first place. But luckily, this is what this current video aims to provide. The most important thing to take away from this whole ordeal though, is that it's a case of avid fans going through great efforts to defend the pay to win in a game. While in the case of D-Day, the microtransactions are undoubtedly pay to win, for other games it's not so clear. Take Phantom Forces for example, another PvP shooter game on Roblox I'm also pretty active in, with just a few hours clocked in. In Phantom Forces, it is also the case that you can quote-unquote pay to win by purchasing in-game currency, which allows you to buy guns and attachments. However, you can also acquire this currency just from playing the game normally, and you progressively unlock new guns and attachments as you rank up as well. The question is if this is pay to win or not. If a microtransaction saves you time by avoiding the grind for something, is it considered an advantage substantial enough to be unfair, or is it okay because there's a free alternative? I'll answer these questions later on, but what I'm trying to highlight by showing you these two games and their microtransactions is to compare and contrast them to show that pay to win comes in more than one kind, and that they differ in terms of how egregious they are. It shows how difficult it is to properly categorize microtransactions, and that even trying to do something as simple as classifying a game as pay to win is no easy feat. Don't get me wrong when it comes to D-Day though, I still do think the game is 100% pay to win, and I believe my video demonstrated it as so, and these people are just kinda deranged. Anyways, I also have a final message to these guys. Your arguments are not good. You guys suck, and goodbye now. I hope your whole family has a nice Christmas. Now I want to quickly go back to Phantom Forces for a moment. In the case of this game, you can still get everything for free, and paying money still provides an advantage, but only by the value and the time it saves you. This often is labeled as pay to progress by some, and it's what I'll be using to define microtransactions that give you something like an item, stat boost, or whatever it be that helps you get ahead in the game, that is also able to be alternatively acquired for free with the caveat that you have to spend some of your precious time to get it. Extrapolating from everything I've said so far, I've established that pay to win is at the heart of the microtransaction discussion. I've talked about it extensively because it's both a genuinely helpful term to be used and a major point of contention. So I want to use it to make a sort of chart of acceptability for microtransactions. What I'm going to do is put pay to win right here, then draw a line straight down the middle. Derivatives of pay to win like the aforementioned pay to progress belong here, and everything not is on the other side. As you can see on this chart, with all these microtransactions, we're going to make millions upon millions of dollars.
Well, first make it so you can only get good guns and stat upgrades with microtransactions.
Not only that, they're locked behind loot boxes, so fun with our absurdly low drop rates.
And if that's not enough, we've implemented an upgrade system.
Then you have to spend even more money unless you want to waste your precious time grinding while struggling with our brand new energy system. All of this is sounding pretty atrocious, right? Imagine Tax Fraud Simulator 2 becoming a game where progression is centered around loot boxes and constant grinding, while there's an energy system making it even more painfully slow to progress for free-to-play players. But wait, that one game called Genshin Impact does all of this and everyone seems to like it. Hold on, Dinn. Now, I'm transitioning into this chapter by talking about Genshin Impact, and I have two main reasons to do so. First, as I said earlier, passing the line of pay to win often is the breaking point for quite a few games. However, games like Genshin Impact directly challenge this notion, which makes us ask, what does make a microtransaction bad if pay to win is sometimes viewed as being okay? This leads us to the very important fact of, did you know that acceptability of microtransactions is on a sliding scale? Unfortunately for us, like many other issues, things are on a gradient rather than being in two distinct zones, and is another factor that makes it difficult to pinpoint why a certain kind of microtransaction is hated, but something adjacent is not. It means we need to investigate what affects the perception of different kinds of microtransactions, and an extremely popular game that contains pay to win in it, like Genshin Impact, is perfect for us to analyze. As for the second reason, I want to revisit Genshin Impact one last time so I can put it to rest for myself once and for all. What do I mean by that? Well, I've only talked about Genshin Impact once on my channel, and in the limited scope of discussing just the ads alone. However, out of public view, I've not only mentioned it in that microtransactions English essay I talked about, but I've also done a persuasive speech where I laid out my case for the problems I have with Genshin Impact. And finally, I even have an unfinished script that was supposed to be for this incredibly satirical video where I basically go, wow guys, Genshin Impact is so bad, am I right? So yeah, I've talked a lot about Genshin Impact. It's because I have quite the complicated view of the game. Like, consider this, I don't particularly like to watch anime, I think open world games have a lot of poor design problems, I'm not too fond of RPGs, and I kind of despise gacha.
Genshin Impact is a free-to-play. Genshin Impact is an open world action. Genshin Impact is an open world action.
Genshin Impact is an anime-style open world action RPG with gacha mechanics embedded in its core gameplay loop. Ah! The fact that a game I have so many problems with became one of the most popular games in recent times, with literally almost all the people I know having played it before or having become avid fans of the game, kind of drives me insane. It's so hard for me to talk about this game because trying to adequately encompass all my thoughts on Genshin Impact proves to be downright impossible. I really want to make sure I phrase my criticism properly because, well, there's a lot of people that enjoy Genshin Impact, and I don't want to come off as some blind hater who writes off the game simply because it has gacha or for some other superficial reason. I 100% understand why people like Genshin Impact, and I'm not here to say that they're wrong for liking the game. So the difficulty of talking about the game comes from the effort that is required to accommodate this fact when I try to criticize it. I unfortunately can't really say I was very successful at this back then. I like the comprehensive arguments stemming from the absence of simply not having enough time and knowledge to really flesh out what I have to say. However, there was a saving grace at the end of this whole thing. Another YouTuber called EYKO made a video criticizing Genshin Impact a while back, and by some miracle, he manages to voice exactly what I want to say on the game better than I ever could. I highly recommend checking his video out if you're interested. So that's enough of my tirade. Let's take a look at Genshin Impact's microtransactions, of which the main attraction is of course the gacha system. It's obviously pay to win, as you can spend money to roll for characters and weapons, but it's under the category of pay to progress, since you can also grind for the currency that's required to roll on the banner. Now the question is this bad? Well, the answer is not an easy yes or no, but if we're talking about how players perceive it, there are a few people that outright avoid Genshin Impact because it's a gacha game, although most will happily play the game without much of a problem with it. When we look more closely at the gacha system, it's widely accepted likely because it's pay to progress, so free-to-play players will put up with the grind even if something like an energy system also exists, further adding to the time and effort that's required to get the characters and weapons you want. And this seems to broadly hold true if we look at another game. Take Bloons Tower Defense 6, a game that also has quite a lot of microtransactions that give you an advantage, but it's still enjoyed by its many players and the microtransactions aren't a problem for them because once again it qualifies as being pay to progress. So that's it, right? It might be a sliding scale, but seems pretty obvious that we can at least draw the line of pay to progress, since people are okay with that, just not outright unfair pay to win. Well, if only it were that easy. You know, we turn our microtransaction chart into a gradient, put pay to progress here right next to the border of acceptability and call it a day, it doesn't work out because a sliding scale has a sliding scale inside of it. For every Genshin Impact or Bloons Tower Defense 6, there are examples of games with pay to progress microtransactions that go the other way and are generally disliked. For example, Star Wars Battlefront 2's loot boxes, the leveling system and gemming implants in Plants vs. Zombies 2, and literally any mobile city building or match 3 game. No matter how much we keep zooming into the edge of this line, we can never definitively say where it is, even as we look at more and more games in our microtransactions. Not only that, but it's also not even always easy to say which side of the line a certain game should sit. It's why it's been so hard for me to write the script and try to fully wrap my head around microtransactions. Despite that, I do feel like I've been able to lay out a good basis on how we should look at microtransactions in this video so far. This chart is indeed useful and can be used to help with categorization, even if we can never find out where exactly to draw lines. In fact, because there's often ambiguity, it should encourage us to be more nuanced when we talk about a game's microtransactions. Going forward, when we try to make judgments on microtransactions, going case by case should still be our standard rather than dismissing a game because it has X and Y. However, let's just zoom out for a moment. I've so far only talked about how players perceive microtransactions, what they see as acceptable, and what isn't. Then looked into the reasons for why this is the case. But we need to focus on what's important and actually get into why certain microtransactions are bad. So that means we need to look at... I have a question. Why do game developers implement microtransactions in the first place? Oh yeah, that's right, money. If it's not obvious, microtransactions make way more money than just selling a game for a fixed price. The incentive to trade game quality for profitability from microtransactions is incredibly high. To put it into perspective, to make a full-fledged AAA game, you typically need at least hundreds of employees, tens of millions of dollars, and about half a decade. That's a lot of time and money that needs to be invested. In comparison, making some skin for a gun at the maximum requires a small team of artists, programmers, and QA testers to work for around a month. At a minimum, requires a single guy with a few hours on his hand. That guy could be me. Look, I just made a gun skin for Text Pet Simulator 2, and that took less than an hour. So it's not that difficult to see why game companies prefer to have microtransactions in their games. Not only is the time, effort, and money spent to profit ratio considerably higher, but microtransactions have the ability to be bought multiple times, while a game will be bought once and that's it. This is basically the entire basis of live service games, and they've become incredibly popular because game companies see how much easier and more profitable it is to make a free game that will bring in constant revenue from microtransactions, rather than risking it with a pay-to-play game with no microtransactions that'll have a high chance of only bringing in short-term revenue. Games like Fortnite and Valorant demonstrate the effectiveness of the live service formula, but for many other games, it hasn't been so successful. So while live service can be done correctly, making for a game that's both great for players and developers, it still comes with quite a few problems, the main one being that game companies sometimes forget you still need to make a good game and one that actually functions upon release. Now, live service games are quite enticing for game companies nowadays, but why stop there? You can go further than that, and that's how you get the hellhole that is the mobile game market. Throwing away pretty much everything that makes a good game, mobile games crank up microtransactions to the extreme, making for games that are essentially 10% game and 90% microtransactions by volume. The worst vendors have piles of microtransactions alongside every single psychological tactic under the sun, trying the hardest to get you to spend some of that cold hard cash. Making an actually good game? What's that? Exploiting human psychological tendencies? Yes please, the line must go up. It's all just pretty upsetting because it works. Mobile games by far outperform every other gaming platform in revenue. Unfortunately, the fact that going all in on microtransactions is so profitable also spells negative consequences for us players of video games. To start, microtransactions will always fundamentally affect the experience of a game. Pay-to-win microtransactions in PvP games will cause unbalance and make it unfair for free-to-play players. Gacha mechanics will tie game progression to RNG. Live service games are not able to deliver the same experience as a non-live service game, and so on and so forth. Microtransactions necessitate games made in certain ways and have knock-on effects to overarching systems, which typically are not good. Plus, there's an incentive to not just have a game accommodate microtransactions, but completely be designed around maximizing the profit of microtransactions. It's the difference between designing a live service game like Apex Legends and making a soulless cash grab mobile game like Homescape, where every facet of the game is designed to push you to spending money. However, this is not all. Sure, microtransactions can be and often will be anti-consumer because it makes games worse, but it also can be very immoral by having the capacity to cause tangible harm. With any pay-to-win microtransaction, a game is exploiting the psychology of players, the desire to progress that everybody naturally has. A 10 pull on a banner to get a powerful character, a power up to pass a level, a stronger gun to beat your opponents. They're all a means to get further ahead in a game. Now when it comes to gacha and loot boxes, it's even worse. The big problem is that they're basically just gambling. And that's bad. Big shocker, right? Real life casinos restrict children from entering them for a reason, so it's frankly evil that because most countries in the world don't have regulations to stop children from partaking in gacha and loot boxes, money is being made by psychologically manipulating players and fostering gambling addictions in a medium where a large percentage of its audience is children. You know what's worse though? That this is somehow okay. Sure, not like completely. I'm not saying that people like when games have unregulated gambling, but rather that they'll just justify the existence of it in a game they like with other aspects of the game they find appealing. Plus, there's a window of acceptability when it comes to microtransactions that has been slowly shifting over the years. Here, let me and Kevin explain it.
Hey Kevin, did you know that if you shoot yourself with low caliber bullets, you'll build immunity and eventually be able to resist high caliber bullets?
Really?
Oh no, Kevin!
Oh, that worked. Let's see me that.
Oh my god, are you good?
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Like with Kevin first getting shot with low caliber bullets, games first started with microtransactions that you wouldn't bat an eye at today, but were heavily mocked at the time. The horse armor of bullets, if you will. Now, as games got shot by more of these bullets, eventually did the window of acceptability also shift farther down, and that's how we get a game as beloved as Genshin Impact, despite literally having gambling as part of its core progression, which is a high caliber bullet. Warning, you cannot actually build immunity to high caliber bullets through shooting yourself with low caliber bullets. Do not try this at home. So from everything I've said so far, you've hopefully come to understand quite a few things. How we can categorize microtransactions, what makes microtransactions bad in the eyes of most players, the complexities that come with trying to figure out why, how microtransactions affect the way games play and the way they're made, and finally what harms they can cause. With all of this established, we can finally get to the most important part in the discussion around microtransactions. Through this whole video so far, I've been trying to tackle microtransactions by being as objective as I could. I wanted to simply take a look at the facts and try to figure out what we should think about microtransactions, and if the 4,000 or so words I've written so far is any indication, is that they're complicated. However, now it's time for me to try to end off by answering the important question of what we should do about them. This is where I'm gonna have to inject my personal opinions into this matter, but ones that are backed by hopefully compelling arguments. I think that there are certain values that we ought to wish to be upheld. As players of video games, that most obviously should be that games are well made and fun to play, and that means we should be trying to ensure that video games are products of creativity, passion, and innovation, and don't become a means to an end for a game company to increase their earnings year after year. So what does that look like when it comes to microtransactions? I believe that means we need to give pushback whenever game quality starts getting sacrificed in favor of microtransactions, when players are being influenced by psychological tricks meant to encourage spending, and especially when microtransactions that have the capacity to cause real harm are implemented. This is definitely all well and good, and I'm sure many would agree with me that these are the times when we should be caring the most about the effects of microtransactions. However, the big problem that comes with trying to combat microtransactions is the fact that people simply do not care. And how can you even really blame them? As much as I am annoyed with how well liked Genshin Impact is despite how detrimental it is in the way it's normalizing gacha mechanics, I understand that to even criticize the game in a really meaningful way, you have to care a whole lot about actually doing it and go through a bunch of time and effort, when you could just, well, not do it. And it's not like complacency is against the law. So I think what we should take away from all this is that if you like video games and want them to continue being a medium of entertainment you enjoy, simply care. Have discussions about the ways companies monetize games. Ban of others to give pushback and call them out when it's predatory, and signal boost games that are good to encourage other game companies to follow suit in what those games did right. I obviously cannot change much with just some YouTube video, so my hope is that at least this video informs you and helps you want to care more about the games that you love and help make future games better. Anyways, I wonder how me and Kevin are doing in that live action skit.
Hey guys, I've been busy fearing for my life and haven't said anything so far, but some voice in my head told me that I should care about the games that I enjoy and try to make them better by encouraging change through discussion with others and voicing our opinions when game companies do stuff, well, like what you guys are planning to do by implementing these microtransactions. So, since I think Tax Fraud Simulator 2 is pretty cool, could you pretty please do not do that and also not kill me? Thanks.
You know what? Sure, I'm feeling nice, and I think I can still live off of the $0.0014 I made from ad revenue.
So that means we're all good, right? And we can all go home?
Wait, but what about that whole getting rescued at the last second and being thwarted because we blabbed to you about our evil plans?